All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So before we go moving on to our next topic, I wanted to spend a little bit of time just talking about this idea of multicellular life and how do we get here? Because not only can mitosis be necessary for reproduction, but also in multicellular organisms, we see mitosis being utilized for growth, development, and repair. So what does that end up translating to? So we look at either that first initial fertilized cell of a new organism, or even in certain parts in your body for repair components, you've got stem cells. And stem cells are really kind of unique. We're going to kind of do a brief overview here. We'll come back to talking more about stem cells later this year. But stem cells are unique body cells that have the ability to continually divide and renew themselves while remaining undifferentiated, or at least to some level. Okay? And what do I mean by undifferentiated? It's basically they don't have a job or don't have a specific job if we're talking about adult stem cells versus embryonic stem cells. But they have the capacity to develop into a variety of specialized cells. So let's just talk embryonic stem cells here, because I think that's probably the easiest way to get into this. And when we talk embryonic stem cells, we're talking about embryos, right? So that initial egg and sperm meet, they fertilize, they start going off through rounds of mitosis to now make that offspring. That initial cell has all of the genetic information that that organism needs. So let's just assume it's human. All right. So mom's going to bring in 23 chromosomes from her egg cell. Dad is going to bring in 23 chromosomes from his sperm cell to make 46 chromosomes in that initial cell. That cell then goes through mitosis, right, to end up growing that baby. So mitosis, remember, keeps the genetic information consistent. So that means that that initial cell had 46 chromosomes, which means it goes through a round of division. Both cells now have 46 chromosomes. Goes through again, all four cells now have 46 chromosomes. Up until we get to the baby, or even you now, every cell in your body has all 46 chromosomes worth of information. Period. The question then becomes, if I look at you as a basic adult organism at this point, you're pretty close to it. Every cell in your body has all 46 chromosomes worth of information, but is it expressing all 46 chromosomes worth of information? Is every cell in your body doing the exact same job? No, right? So how did we get there? So you look at these stem cells and they either have the capacity to just continue to be stem cells, or they have the capacity to eventually specialize or differentiate. So stem cells are undifferentiated. These specialized cells, like your heart muscle cell, or your skin cells, or your neurons, all of those are now specialized cells. They have gone through a process of differentiating into different types of cells, and they do this based on the components or the parts of their genetics that they listen to. So if I look at 46 chromosomes worth of information, none of the cells in your body are expressing all 46 chromosomes worth. They're just not. Even those stem cells are only expressing a small component that doesn't tell them a specific job to do. So think of those stem cells kind of like kids going into preschool or kindergarten. They've got no clue the sheer amount of potential occupations that exist, the potential careers that they could do. But what do you start doing as you're going through elementary and middle school and even high school is learning what those careers are and what your interests are. So you start specializing. By the time you get to high school, you're starting to choose career center or traditional high school. Um, you're choosing elective classes based on your interests and probably your career aspirations. All right. So that's kind of what those stem cells would do. They would eventually get influenced by things that in their environment and other cells that they come in contact with to start specializing what they become until you get to the point where you are an adult and you have a career and that is your sort of end goal. That would be that finalized specialized cell here. All right. And so all of the stuff that you learn in middle and high school, and even in some cases in college, you sort of brain dump eventually some of it because you don't need it. It's not what's required for you to do your job and live your life every day. All right. Well, your specialized cells basically shut down components of their genome of that 46 chromosomes and they only access what they need. So if I'm going to be a heart cell, then I'm going to access a certain set of information in my DNA. If I am a skin cell, I'm going to access a different set of information in my DNA. If I'm a neuron, it's a different set of information, right? And all of that goes back to the way that your chromosomes are able to expand and condense. So remember that your chromosomes have those histones, right? Those little protein balls. Well, when we go through mitosis, we just caused every histone and every chromosome to condense so that I could move it safely. But your cells can also target certain components of your chromosomes and shut down just certain parts of it, right? So I can make those histones sticky in just components of the chromosome that I don't need because I'm never going to access that again. So kind of think of it like you were to walk into the biggest library you ever saw, but on your library card, as you swiped in the door, it said that you were a nurse. And so you are only allowed to access the parts of the library that have to do with biology, medicine, maybe some chemistry, right? But you're not going to have access to all of the history books and the fictional stories and the political science and all of that, right? You don't even get the option because it's shut down to you. Now you walk in as a political science analyst, and now you are only given access to certain history components that have to do with politics. You are not given access to the chemistry or the physics. Does that make sense? That's kind of what your genome is doing to itself, its chromosomes are doing to itself as it differentiates. And it's really important that that differentiation happens, all right? Because we're not meant to express all of that genetic information all the time. We need those cells to do different jobs and as a result, access different information. So that each of these jobs does its own thing so that you as the organism don't have to do every task in every cell in your body, right? It's the same reason that different people have different jobs in society. No one person could do every job that is necessary for the economy to exist, for it to survive and thrive. So those multicellular organisms greatly depend on the interactions between those different cell types, right? So this goes back to those levels of organization that we talked about way at the beginning of the school year. So when we talk about cells that are doing similar jobs and work together, then we're talking about that aggregate of tissues. We talk about tissues that do similar jobs, and now we're talking about organs. We talk about different organs that are doing similar jobs, and we talk about those organ systems. And collectively, those organ systems ensure that you as the organism function. So I can take something like your cardiovascular system, right? And that will include things like your heart and your blood vessels and the blood cells themselves, because they're all doing similar jobs, but each of those individually is a component organ. I can then dig down into something like your heart itself and look at the muscle cells and the epithelial cells and the electrical conducting cells. All of those are different tissues that are working together in that organ, and then I can drill down to a single cardiac muscle cell or a single epithelial cell. And those then are collectively working together to make those tissues. And then we take your entire body as an organism and look at your cardiovascular system, your respiratory system, your nervous system, your digestive system, your integumentary system, your immune system, right? And all of those systems have their own individual organs, individual tissues, individual cells, but collectively you need all of those systems to be working together and working accurately so that you as the organism can survive and function. So we look at the sort of level of organization below an organism, and this is how your body is set up to hopefully work. But at any point when one component of that whole system starts to fail, other systems start to fail, other components start to fail. And that's when we get disease processes. We have to try and figure out, can we fix this? How do we stop it? Right? What do we do in order to maintain the health and safety of that